So before running for the office, the state rep for District 77, what was your career like before?
Sure. Well, when I was at UD and kind of got the master's degree, I sort of, due to the necessities of life, having a family, that kind of stuff. My wife got pregnant with Ellie, our oldest. Just kind of like PhD wasn't in the works at the time, and so I picked up a job with an arbitration administrative firm. Is what it's called. And I had an opportunity to go to California. Then we went to Rhode Island.
Oh wow.
And then we came here right before Katrina. In fact, we moved in our home literally the week before Katrina. It was amazing.
Wow.
Over in Covington.
Wow.
And so it was, one of these things where you look around and you're just amazed at God's hand. One of the things that came about, we were in Rhode Island and had been with that company about 5 years and was having a miserable time. Loved Rhode Island.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful place to be. We had 2 of our children there, but was miserable. And couldn't figure out, like, God, what's going on here? Like, it was a couple of years in the making. It wasn't just like 6 months or something.
Right.
And I remember my mother-in-law said, there's going to come a time when you're going to know exactly why you're here. And what happened was my sister had moved up to New York, Brooklyn, got an MFA, and was slowly settling there. And she was much younger than me, about 7 years. She ended up dying of a thing called Wilson's disease.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
man.
she was in upstate New York, and my parents came up. We picked them up. And my point of it is that after it happened, literally like a month later, I got the job offer to come back home. So it just felt like you could just see that was God's hand. I was there for a reason. We were there for a reason.
That's right.
Kind of helped them walk through this whole thing.
Wow.
And then we came home and I had 3 daughters.
That's right.
And so all of a sudden, my mother, who just lost her daughter, at least had 3 grandchildren right there.
Yeah.
It was an amazing thing to see.
Yeah.
So that was my first 10 years. And then at some point a few years later, I met someone who lives in Covington, as a matter of fact, who worked for the Towboat and Barge Industry Association. And when I would go to Manresa, I just loved watching the towboats and barges on the river. And it was just one of these things like, man, that'd be so neat to work for that industry.
Yeah.
And sure enough, he left, and I saw the ad, talked to him, got an interview. And I said, I'm not a mariner. I don't know anything about the marine industry. Does it matter? And he said, no. They want a skill set. They'll teach you everything else.
Yeah.
And I've been there since. It's about 10 years.
Praise God.
And I love the people. Salt of the earth people. Working the
hard
basics.
Workers.
Yeah, transportation basic. Yeah. One of the most amazing natural resources. Our river and the intercoastal waterway. And they've been good to me. They let me do a lot of things that people dream of. I get to go on trips for work, and they let me run for office, and it's been a great gift. And so that's what I've been doing. I did run for city council in my office. It's funny because when we moved to Covington, I kind of thought I won't run for something. I'll stay involved. And what happened was there was a council race. A councilman and a few people in the neighborhood encouraged me to run. They just said, we think we could do better. And I didn't think I could win. I just did it to give a fair race, and sure enough, we won. And did that for about 6 years, and that was real kind of community service.
Yeah.
You get paid a little bit, but you really, you get in the nuts and bolts of, drainage and streets and, police budgets and stuff. And it was an eye-opening experience because I had never really, I don't want to say cared, but growing up in Metairie, there's no city, you got a parish government. Really never plugged into those things.
Right.
And it was very fulfilling to help neighbors, different little things here and there. But my heart was always on state politics, and sure enough, I knew the state rep would be terming out. It's just sort of like, here's a chance. And I've always kind of let the Blessed Mother be my campaign manager. I was like, well, we're going to give it a shot, and if it doesn't work out, who cares? We'll live. And sure enough, it did. And it's a blessing.
Well, how did that work with making the decision with Kim? Like, so hey, Kim, I got an idea. Like, how did y'all vet that out? How did y'all discern that together?
Yeah, it's funny you say that. Okay, so she always knew my thoughts and interest in politics, and so I think she knew there was a decent
the day
shot.
was coming.
Yeah, there's something like that was going to happen.
Yeah.
I think she's always, and it's an absolute honor and a blessing to be trusted by a spouse that she knew.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm talking about, right? she just knows I've got our best interests at heart.
Yeah.
And, you know, people make mistakes, but, so we talked it through, what it would look like. And this is how the final decision came. I was really skeptical that my bosses at work would let me do it. It's a part-time job. Mm-hmm. It does take a little time away physically from your job. Mm-hmm. You're capable of doing both, but you just got to go through some extra work, and you got to really be focused. And we kind of said, look, here's how it goes. We'll go ask.
Yeah.
If they say no, then we'll just
take that as an
Yeah, we'll just kind of trust that that door's closed. And they said yes.
Take the next step.
And my wife actually said, when they said yes, I really knew, like, yeah, this is something you're called to do. And
wow.
I mean, called to run is different than called to do it. You know, you got to trust the voters to do that. So, you know, it worked out.
But this is the reason why I ask, is that's such an important question, right? As spouses, whatever it is, running political office or taking the new job, going to UD or going to, you know, whatever, going outside of yourself to it's going to require a strain on both parties, right? It's like, I remember, I mean, Elise and I, when I had in my heart to go to DC, I knew it as clear as this table in front of me that that's what God wanted us to do. Mm-hmm. But then, as Elise said, God didn't give her that memo, you know? So like, and I'm sitting here thinking to myself, I'm like, can't you see it, Lord? Like come on, it's like God is obviously putting this on our hearts for us to do this. And she's like, I don't see the same signs that you're seeing, Jason. So then we had to like really discern and pray about that. But as you said, like, you know, coming together and having that support, and, you know, when eventually through much prayer and discernment, we could see that, because I'm trying not to do like, this is what I want to do, or like, this is what she wants to do. I'm like, I want to do what does God want for us? And I was taking that step because I saw that clearly, like, this is what God is asking of us to do. Because, I mean, Kim's taking on that role as well, right? Absolutely. I mean, she's got to take that step with you, and so you've got to be united in that step together. And so that's a very challenging thing for all spouses, I think, to kind of figure out, like, wait, is this what you want to do? Or like, if I do this, the next time I'm doing this, or whatever like that. It's like, well, it's not like that. It's got to be something a little bit more united. It's got to the choreography is coming from the divine choreographer. It ain't coming from me. It's not coming from you. Right. But it's got to come from God, and we got to take those steps, and we got to trust. Sometimes, you know, Mary got the angel, right, saying that you're going to be the one, right, and bear the son, and she said yes to that. And that disrupted things at home, right? Joseph wanted to divorce Mary quietly, but then later on, the angel came to Joseph, but also came to Joseph and said, you need to get out of Egypt. The angel didn't go to Mary and say, hey, take your husband and take your child and go out to Egypt. He said that to Joseph. And so Mary had to trust in what the Lord was asking for both of them to do.
I totally agree. I mean, one of the things, and we talked about the rosary beforehand, I've just been a firm believer that, you know, if I'm praying the rosary and I'm doing, you know, have a prayer life, doing the things I'm supposed to do, that for the most part, I'm going to go in the right direction. Yeah. Even if it's something that's going to fail, there was some reason it was meant to fail. Is kind of how I see it. And
that's right.
We have always had a little bit of a rule, unwritten rule, that, you know, whoever felt the strongest about something, you know, that we wanted to do, we kind of would defer. I mean, I tend to be the strongest emotional, passionate kind of, you know, of the couple. Yeah. So, you know, she'll tend to defer in some things, but there's been issues where she's like, no, I absolutely feel, and I'm, all right, I'll defer. You know, we'll go where you want to go.
It's amazing trusting that either one, that in the heart that God is calling, to trust, okay, well, God must be speaking loud and clear to you. I don't see it, but I'm going to trust.
That's it. I remember a little younger in my faith life, I used to have this sort of image. It was very vague, but I've heard others suggest the same thing, where you're trying to discern God's will, and you kind of think like there's a signal, and if you miss it, you're in trouble. Yeah. Like God's the head football coach on the sidelines.
Right,
you know, when like Saban pulls things down, he's like, you missed it.
Right.
Like, and that's not it at all.
No,
you know,
no.
and I think that comes with a little maturity in faith, and you kind of realize that even if you miss something, or even if you go down the wrong way, you know, God's still going with you, right? Yeah.
Right.
You know, there may be a turnaround point or some sort of detour down the road, but you just got to trust that. And I think the other thing we do, and I think others have done this, I've heard others do this, you know, I will tend to ask for I don't want to say a sign, but I'll ask for some feedback from the Lord.
Confirmation.
Yeah, and I'll do it in this way. I'll kind of say, I've done my diligence. I've talked to people. I've prayed about it. I think this is what I need to do.
That's right.
And try to give enough time in between the action,
right?
Whether it's a week or 30 days or something when you can, and just kind of say, can you show me if I'm wrong here?
Yeah.
And I've had things crumble,
wow.
at times.
Yeah, yep.
I mean, not all the time, but
right.
you're like, ooh, yeah, glad we didn't do that, right?
Yeah. No, I agree. Like, patience is key, and trust is key. And like, one of the prayers that we pray is, Lord, open the doors you want open and close the doors you want closed. And as we get to a point where we feel like, okay, this is, I believe, where you're calling us to go. We're really trying to discern your will, and we're going to take that step and trust that if we are making a mistake, maybe we are off base, that God's going to give us that nudge to kind of gradually lead us back. And I remember what you were saying, like, we were, when we first got married, there was a lot for sale that we wanted to get. And it was right across the street from our friend's house, and I was trying to like lowball him, and I called the guy and I'm lowballing him, and then finally, like, the guy just wouldn't budge. So finally I was like, okay, fine, I'm gonna buy the lot, right? And we signed the papers, and it wasn't coming through. Like, I'm like, but I signed papers. This guy won't sell me the lot. Like, I'm giving him everything he's asking for. It's not coming through. Why is this? And then I kind of paused, and I was like, babe, we've been praying this prayer. Open the doors you want open, close the doors you want closed, and like, I don't know why this isn't working for us. And I was like, oh, I think God's trying to tell us something. I think He's trying to close a door on us. And we just kind of backed off. And thank God we didn't, because we would not have been able to afford to do that. I think if we would have been building, it would have been during Hurricane Katrina. So the building costs before Katrina and the building costs after Katrina would have swamped us. It would have been terrible. So it worked. It was, anyway, but looking back, hindsight, I remember sitting there thinking, okay, yeah, obviously God's hand was in this. But in the moment, I was thinking, like, I was all frustrated. I was like, God, I really wanted this. I wanted this lot. Like, I'm going to put the money down for it. I'm going to buy it. Why won't this thing happen? And then the whole time, but the whole time I was praying that prayer, Lord God, if this isn't your will, close the door. But I was kind of like almost saying it but I wasn't really meaning it. And then finally it all came together. I was like, oh, that's right. When I say these things and I pray to God, I got to mean it. I can't just like give Him lip service. I really need to put my heart in. I got to be detached. If He doesn't want me on it, I don't want to do it.
Oh man, I know what you're saying. I mean, that kind of happened with us with Katrina. I mean, we were starting to build in the Covington area. Had a grandfather who had given my dad and other siblings a lot. He gave it to us,
Nice.
Yeah, and then what happened was the building process was just going awry. And now keep in mind, it's 6 months before Katrina. We don't know what's coming.
Right.
And at some point, it was just sort of this, man, this doesn't seem right. Something's wrong. I don't feel comfortable with this guy.
Yeah.
And it was, once he puts, the first piece of wood they put on that property, we're going to be kind of stuck in this thing.
Yeah.
And so we just pulled out, and we sold a lot, and we bought this house. And like I told you, we moved in a week before Katrina. And you look back, and you're like, wow.
Yeah, God's hand on that.
Yeah, I mean, God, who knows what would have happened. I mean, it would have been a disaster, but across the bear. But I know a lot of people have a lot worse they've dealt with, so I can't complain.
No, absolutely. There's no complaints. I was at Rummel when I was teaching there, which was really cool. My dad graduated from Rummel, and you bring up Rummel, but and I remember sitting there, and when we were right back, the faculty came back. We were getting the school started back up again, and we were just kind of saying what happened to us during the storm, and I remember people were saying things like, "Oh, we only had a foot of water in our house," like they were thankful that they only had 12 inches of water, standing water within their home. And I'm sitting there thinking about, like, we were on the North Shore. We had a lot of wind damage. We had power outage for weeks. But man, it was nothing like what a lot of people experience. And so it's like, you really got to, and God is in all that, regardless of whether the storm's coming. And I tell this a lot when, Elise and I were going through the stuff, everything with cancer and still on the fight. Good news, we had some great scans this past week. We had some really good scan reports and stuff like that. So we're very thankful for that. But I told the kids, I'm like, look, just because you believe in Jesus and you love Jesus and you go to church and everything like that, that doesn't mean that storms don't come. In Matthew chapter 7, he says, everyone who listens to these words of mine and acts on them will be like a wise man who built his house on rock. But the one who doesn't listen, right, they said the storm came, but the storm came to both, the one who listened and act and the one who listened and didn't act. Storms came to both houses. Just because you listen and you act doesn't prevent the storms. What it does show that is that you won't be swamped by the storm. So it's just trusting in God and knowing that there's going to be challenges, there's going to be crosses, there's going to be these difficulties that we're going to run against. But the question is that during the storm, are you going to keep your eyes on Jesus and walk through that storm, or are you going to let the storm take your focus and get sunk in the waves? So, so anyway, it's just, prayers for those who are still struggling with different type of disasters and challenges. And we got to be grateful and thankful for what we have. And for those that are, spared a lot of that, maybe put in our heart to maybe see how we can help others, in the struggles.